Today we're going to look at the pharmacology of aminoglycosides. Aminoglycosides are basically a class of antibiotics which include gentamicin, tobramycin, amikacin, neomycin, and streptomycin. This class of drugs work by binding to the 30S ribosomal subunit, inhibiting the bacterial protein synthesis, causing its death. Unlike other medications which have a similar mechanism of action, aminoglycosides are known as bactericidal, and they work synergistically with inhibitors of bacterial cell wall synthesis, for example beta-lactam antibiotics, when they are used in the treatment of infections caused by gram-positive pathogens. Aminoglycosides can be classified as either systemic aminoglycosides or topical aminoglycosides, which are applied externally. Systemic aminoglycosides include drugs such as streptomycin, gentamicin, kanamycin, amikacin, tobramycin, cyclomycin, and nitlimycin. On the other hand, topical aminoglycosides that are in production are neomycin, bromocytin, and paromomycin. Let's then look at the mechanism of action and how these aminoglycosides exert their effect. Aminoglycosides typically work by binding to the 30S subunit of the bacterial ribosomal unit. This binding prevents the initiation of the complex formation, leading to a misreading of the messenger RNA, and this misreading distorts or causes incorrect proteins to be formed, resulting in the bacterial cell death. If you're asked about the mechanism of action, then it's quite important for you to know that aminoglycosides bind to the 30S subunit, distorting its structure and causing a misreading of the mRNA, eventually causing bacterial death. When looking at the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of aminoglycosides, aminoglycosides are known to be having a poor oral bioavailability. This is the reason why majority of these aminoglycosides are administered parenterally or topically. They have a poor distribution to the tissues, meaning it doesn't reach intraocular fluid levels, biliary tree concentration, and these aminoglycosides do not close the blood-brain barrier well. Therefore, you don't expect their concentration in the cerebrospinal fluid to be quite high. Aminoglycosides are known to be hydrophilic in nature, meaning that the volume of distribution increases with the fluid overload in the body. For example, we expect an increased distribution in patients with edema or ascites, and generally they have a minimal metabolism because of their poor cellular penetration, and they're known to cross the placental barriers. Aminoglycosides are basically excreted via the kidneys through a glomerular filtration process, where we expect a high urinary concentration of the drug, and 99% of this excreted drug is unchanged in urine, therefore giving us a chance to use aminoglycosides in the treatment of urinary tract infections. They have a prolonged half-life in case of a renal insufficiency of up to 48 hours, and the clearance or the renal clearance of aminoglycoside is correlated with the renal function. To mean, if there is a reduced glomerular filtration, we expect an increased or prolonged half-life. And in case of toxicity, we can dialyze this drug through hemodialysis. Some of the indications of aminoglycosides are endocarditis, septicemia, treatment of pneumonias, meningitis, and urinary tract infections. Aminoglycosides are effective against aerobic gram-negative bacilli, for example, Escherichia coli, Klebsiella, and they have a limited activity against gram-negative cocci. However, aminoglycosides are not effective against anaerobes or gram-positive bacilli. Regarding the dosing regimens, we apply or implement a single daily dosing for most patients who have a normal renal function. And with aminoglycosides, we have a concentration dependent killing effect and a long post antibiotic effect. For example, with gentamicin, we use a dose of 3 to 5 milligrams per kilogram per day. And with streptomycin, we commonly use a dose between 7.5 to 15 milligrams per kilogram per day. We don't use a single daily dose in children or patients who have a renal dysfunction. And as we had mentioned earlier, we combine aminoglycosides with beta-lactam antibiotics to produce its synergistic effects for infections like endocarditis. With the continuous usage of these aminoglycosides, there has been a development of resistance, making it one of the rising concerns. Resistance can develop due to production of inactivating enzymes, for example, acetyltransferases, phosphotransferases, and nucleotidyl transferases enzyme. This resistance to aminoglycosides can as well develop due to alterations of their ribosomal binding sites through a process known as methylation. And some of these bacteria can develop an efflux system, which eventually reduces cell permeability. Enzymatic inactivation can as well occur through adenylation or acetylation or phosphorylation. Aminoglycoside resistance can happen due to an alteration of the 30S subunit of the ribosomal binding sites for these drugs. What are the commonest adverse drug reactions that we expect to see in patients who are using aminoglycosides? The three common or major adverse drug reactions are ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and a neuromuscular blockade. The ototoxicity that occurs in aminoglycoside use is irreversible and occurs bilaterally, causing high frequency hearing loss. And it's more common with the use of neomycin, amikacin, and kanamycin. These patients might also complain or experience vestibular symptoms, for example, vertigo, ataxia, and imbalance. And nephrotoxicity occurs because of a tubular damage, which leads to the development of a low glomerular filtration rate and albuminuria. This toxicity is related to the total dose, the age of the patient, and any other underlying comorbidities. So tobramycin and streptomycin are known to be less or nephrotoxic. And the last adverse drug reaction is a neuromuscular blockade, which occurs due to the blockage of a neuromuscular junction by the calcium ion displacement and acetylcholine inhibition. Neuromuscular blockage is quite more in neomycin, streptomycin, and it rarely occurs in cases of tobramycin. Some of the contraindications of aminoglycosides are the patients with hearing deficit because the damage to the eighth cranial nerve can worsen the hearing loss. Patients who have myasthenia gravis, patients with severe renal diseases as they are nephrotoxic, and those with hypersensitivity to aminoglycosides. We don't use aminoglycosides in neonates, geriatrics, and patients with infant podolism and patients with Parkinsonism, as well as we do not encourage the use of aminoglycosides in pregnancy because aminoglycosides are known to cross the placental barrier, causing fetal ototoxicity. And as well, we do not encourage the combination of aminoglycosides with other ototoxic or nephrotoxic drugs, for example, furosemide and vancomycin. Lastly, elderly patients with renal disease and who are undergoing maybe procedures which require muscle relaxation. Let's have a look at some of the examples of aminoglycosides and some important information for you to know of each drug. We start with gentamicin. Gentamicin is normally the first line drug in most of infections. It is cheap and it comes from an organism known as Micromonospora purpurea. It is effective against gram-negative bacilli, and we use this one commonly in sepsis, pelvic infections and inflammations, and endocarditis, together with the beta-lactam antibiotics. The next example is streptomycin, which is an oldest aminoglycoside from the Streptomyces gracias. We use it in the treatment of tuberculosis, plague, tularemias, and endocarditis. It is known to have low nephrotoxicity and less incidences of hypersensitivity. Some examples are such as kanamycin, tobramycin, cytomycin, and amikacin. With kanamycin, it has a similar structure and function as streptomycin, and it is rarely used. Tobramycin is used in a treatment of Pseudomonas infection or Proteus infections that are resistant to gentamicin. Cytomycin is known to be more potent on Pseudomonas, and it's similar in its pharmacokinetics and dynamics with gentamicin. Amikacin is a semi-synthetic, less toxic derivative of kanamycin, which is the broadest activity and is known to be resistant to most of the inactivating enzymes. We use amikacin in serious hospital infections and multi-drug resistance tuberculosis. Netilmycin itself is a semi-synthetic gentamicin derivative that has a broader spectrum of action and a less ototoxicity. It is more effective against Klebsiella infections and Enterobacter. And lastly, we have neomycin and pharmacetine, with neomycin having a wide spectrum, and topical and oral uses are available for neomycin. We use neomycin for bowel preparation before surgery, as well as wounds. Pharmacetine is a topical aminoglycoside that we use. Pharmacetine is known to be too toxic systemically.